Dark Souls 2 is the third entry in From Software's Souls series and the sequel to the 2011 cult hit Dark Souls, an infamously difficult but never unfair action RPG with highly precise and technical combat, a huge and fascinating open world to discover, and a story that is as much yours as it is the developers. The game amassed a huge cult following. From realised that the game could never be the revolution Dark Souls was to Demon Souls, so instead they looked to improve what they had, and by Jove they did. In a Souls game, you will travel from boss to boss accumulating souls by killing enemies and bosses alike. Souls are both the XP system in the game and the currency, so you will use these souls to both buy new equipment and level up your character. But there is a twist. Any unspent souls will be dropped upon death, and failure to retrieve them in the next life will see all of your souls, all of your work, disappear. Bonfires are the checkpoints in the game. They will allow you to equip new spells, replenish health, and your Estus Flask, your primary source of healing in the field. You can travel freely between bonfires, and the main hub's bonfire is where you will be doing your leveling. Do keep in mind though, using bonfires will respawn all enemies in the area bar the boss. Dark Souls 2 retains the series' staple level of difficulty, and in some cases heightens it. There is a fairly controversial feature, one I'm in favour of, that removes 10% of your health with each death, all the way down to 50%. The only way to get back that lost health, reverting back to your human form, which requires use of a human effigy. These are extremely rare finds and often prove invaluable, as the benefits of being human go far beyond just that of a full health bar. Being human grants greater resistance to the elements, the ability to interact with certain objects only available to humans, and also allows the player to summon other players into their world to help with bosses or a particularly difficult area. This adds difficult decision making to the difficult gameplay. There have been times where I found myself staring at a fog gate, which are the doorways to boss rooms, in my human form, contemplating whether or not to enter and risk my humanity without even knowing the boss's attack pattern. Bosses are the lifeblood of Souls games. For many like myself, it is the reason to play the game. While regular enemies in some areas can be difficult, it is the boss fights that give Dark Souls its reputation. It is executed beautifully here. In many RPGs, your success in a boss fight is quite often determined by how many healing items are in your inventory. Dark Souls teaches you quite early on that this is not the case here. See, the trouble with Dark Souls bosses isn't how many healing items you'll need, it's finding time to actually use them. Earlier I stated that I was often indecisive as to whether or not to risk my humanity entering an inescapable boss room without first learning its attack pattern. Winging a boss first go, especially toward the end of the game, is an incredible feat, as bosses often demand ruthless timing and unwavering patience. You have to figure out which moves to dodge and which to block, openings in the attack pattern to either attack or heal, how many attacks you can fit in, how to bait out certain moves, and manipulate the boss using positioning. I'd spend hours throwing myself at a boss and no attempt ever felt like it wasn't worthwhile. Every time I'd learn a little bit more and get that little bit closer. Holy crap, these encounters are intense. They send you back to an almost primal state, as souls and all the time it took to get there are put on the line. My eyes would widen, my hands shake, I could feel all 180 beats of my heart every minute. The River Nile would flow from my armpits and my butt cheeks would turn hard enough to shape iron on. What followed would be either a euphoria of happiness and relief, or another soul-crushing defeat, but never aggravation. As many times as Dark Souls 2 kicked my ass over my 100 hours with it, it never frustrated me, as every death was my own doing, and I knew what I did wrong, and felt that I was rightfully punished for it. That goes for the whole game, not just the bosses, and you can never over-level yourself in Dark Souls 2. Even during endgame, a lapse in concentration can mean your demise at the hands of a starter area enemy. Where improvement comes is in your tactics, your knowledge of how the game works, the patience and the tolerance for pain the game will instill in you. In my reviews, I usually tackle the story first, but in this game the story only really exists if you look for it. Rather than picking your next location on the galaxy map and having Admiral Hackett explain to you why your mission is vital to the cause, NPCs will spout what initially seem like utter drivel, in the Souls' signature half-asleep tone. Rather than asking Moradin for a 20-minute lecture on the Genophage and its political implications, you'll read item descriptions that will read stuff like, "Belong to a Knight of the Fourth Lord," which you'll respond to, "Ooh, 5% fire resistance." It is completely possible to miss the story. If someone had asked me what the story was about after my first playthrough, I probably would have said, "An epic quest across strange lands in which I must get my ass handed back to me on a silver platter with another gaping hole torn in it by enormous monsters to get back my wife and child that seemed to be made out of candle wax." But in the end, I kinda just sat in a chair and forgot about all of that. After my second playthrough, I thought, well, now I know shit all, so I went and googled it. That is when I discovered the beauty of this game's story. I found out that the story is largely interpretive. The community is left to piece it together and develop theories with what information From Software has provided us with. The story is truly fascinating, and I would encourage you to go and look it up once you finish the game. Multiplayer is a lot easier to understand this time around. The messages players leave on the ground can be raided without entering another menu. Covenants, your player versus player faction, have now been expanded upon, now allowing you to drag other players from their world into yours and forcing them to travel through a gauntlet of traps and enemies you've created. The function of these covenants are much better explained this time around. I didn't say good, I just said better. Allowing more casual players to have a taste of the PvP offering. Dark Souls 2 has had some changes made to the PvP balancing, ensuring that it's a lot harder for a level 10 noobling to be invaded by a level 100 god who will dance around and toy with them before lifting their head off their spinal column with a magical claymore up the arse, before sending them a very rudely worded welcome to Dark Souls message. Dark Souls 2 is an improvement on the first in almost all areas. The tutorial is more than just a slap on the back and a gift of a broken stick, the multiplayer is more readily accessible, the gameplay is tighter and more finely tuned, and it is harder to exploit the AI among many other improvements to the mechanics in general. This is the best starting point in the series and the most refined Souls game yet. If you game enough to complete the first couple of bosses, this game will consume you. 9.5 out of 10. Now, I would usually have all sorts of clips going in the background of my review, furthering my point and stuff like that, but unlike my other reviews, I didn't have an entire Let's Play worth of footage to pull from. So I apologise that all of the footage is just one big block, but I did get a boss fight for us, so that's good. If you want to see both Mad Dog and myself play through the Souls series together, click the link in the description to check out our Silly Souls. At the moment we only have the first game up, but we will eventually get to the second once we have completed the first. So I sincerely hope you've enjoyed our review. Thank you very much for watching, please like, subscribe, tell your friends, all the usual. This is Ivesy, signing off.